All right, I want to thank you for joining us. This is our weekly webinar. I'm Mark Schumacher, CEO of the Home Furnishings Association, and I welcome you to yet another hour that I promise you, and I get teased about this a lot. I always talk about takeaways. We always make sure that you have so many takeaways that you're going to have to watch this webinar twice. That's just the way it works because we bring great experts in to talk about specific subjects, and we are going granular again today in an area that is so critical. We're talking about follow-up strategies. We're talking about building your pipeline. We're talking about increasing customer loyalty. This is really about, once you've got that customer in the door now, how do you keep them? How do you leverage them going forward? We've got a lot to talk about here. We've got a great panel, but I got to talk about a couple little bits of housekeeping first. We've changed this up a little bit. If you've noticed, we're now on Zoom webinars. So at the bottom of your screen, you will see a Q&A tab. That's where if you have any questions, please put it in the Q&A tab. The guests here are not going to be monitoring that, but we will, and we'll be able to pull up those questions as we work our way through. So we want to get to those. So that's number one. Number two, I talked about watching this twice. Remember, myhfa.org/webinar. Our entire library of webinars are there on demand. If you're looking for something that you really want to play for your team at a team meeting or really emphasize a certain area, that's a great place to get that material. And I also want to thank Synchrony. They are our sponsors of all of our education here. They're our thought leaders in education, and we thank them for their sponsorship as always. And I'm going to get to our guests today because we've got a couple of familiar faces and some new folks as well. So let me just work around the squares here. First, I want to introduce Matt Pridemore. Matt not only is somebody that owns a number of retail franchises in the home furnishings realm, but he's one of our sales trainers at the HFA Sales Academy. If you don't know much about the Sales Academy, also myhfa.org, you'll find it there. So Matt, thank you for joining us. Bill Kretz is here. Bill's been with us before. He's Director of Sales with Home Trends. They are an Ashley Home Store franchisee, and he's got a lot of great insights. They're doing some really cool things there. So Bill, as always, thank you for being a part of this too. And Renee Gilmore is new to us. Renee is Assistant Vice President of Merchant Learning and Development for Synchrony. And, she's really helped a lot of partners really, leverage their programs, their credit programs, et cetera, and really a lot about the success of customer interactions. And so we've got some great insights from Renee here today as well. And she's also going to really help us with some really good data and things like that. So by the way, three of you, thank you for joining us. We had a really robust conversation before we started today because there's so much to talk about here. But let me kind of work around the room with just kind of a good starting question here. This sounds easy, right? You get a customer in the door, and now you're just trying to really leverage them and getting them to come back. But I think that for a lot of retailers, they struggle. And so, Matt, I want to start with you. Is this an area that is it fair to say, it seems to me in the conversations that I've had, that this is an area with a great deal of opportunity and promise, but very much something that is not always the focus of a lot of the retailers out there. Can you talk a little bit about that? Am I correct in that assumption?
Very much correct. And with owning, furniture stores and being on the ground level, watching this happen, so many times the customers may get greeted at the door and then they might get reapproached. But the real wins here are the follow-ups. It's the number of touch points. We use that term touch points, that those are going to happen in the store, obviously. But there are a lot of times that, a wife is going to come in shopping, that she needs to talk to the husband, vice versa, those type things that are going to happen. So once they leave, it's really about the touch points and the follow-up and that whole realm. And using a key term that I like to use, consistency. That's to me what is going to define whether you are good or great, is consistency there.
All right, awesome. Appreciate that. Bill, talk a little bit about from your standpoint too. Is this one of those areas that you're just having to consistently remind, because it's so great to celebrate a win, right? To celebrate a sale, but you got to be thinking about that next one, right? That's what we're talking about today.
I really think that a term that we use a lot is a non-negotiable selling standard. So there's certain things in the store that we have to do every single time. We have to talk about furniture protection. We have to talk about mattresses. There's several of them, but one of them is we have to get contact information from our customers, and we have to follow up. And we have a customer success program set up in our locations where we require non-negotiably all of the salespeople make 3 contacts with all of the guests that they get an opportunity or a quote in the system or contact information from, and we track that and we track successes and celebrate them as well. So I think to encourage people to follow up, you have to celebrate the success of when they actually get that customer back in and they make that sale. You got to let the rest of the team know that, you know.
Well, it sounds to me like you're also saying
it.
it, but you're also saying it's got to be unequivocal that this is not optional, that you're basically saying, yeah, we're celebrating this, but there's this standard you have to have. So once again, we like to say here internally at HFA, you can't manage what you can't measure. And so you're really looking to get this truly measured by knowing how many contacts your people are making. Fair?
Yes, we track productivity score, which includes your close rate plus how many contacts you get. And it's a percentage that we require everybody to be, at 65% is where we want everybody to be. And we track it on a daily basis.
100%. Good. There's a number of good takeaways already. See, I told you. I guarantee takeaways, and they happen. Renee, let me ask you this: since in your position, obviously you've got a little more of a global look at this, and not just specifically for a retailer, but how much, before we get really into some of these specifics, how much is this either a struggle for some, or maybe something that's not utilized enough by a lot of our retailers out there that know how critical right now with kind of a flat economy, how much we need these sales?
Yeah, Mark, it's definitely global. It's across all the industries I work with. So whether you're selling sofas or snowmobiles, we're seeing folks having the same issue. And what I've distilled is something that I just call the three key takeaways: confidence, authenticity, and value. So from the time that customer is in the parking lot to the time their purchase is delivered, there's a number of things that you can do throughout that process to be, number one, satisfiers, delighters. And once somebody has an excellent experience, there, as you were talking about before, that's where your referrals come from. You're at a barbecue and you say, hey, you know what? I bought a couch from this place and it was awesome. They really went above and beyond for me. And I think too, the biggest thing that I encourage, and a lot of our training content is around this, because I've done tons of research and gotten feedback from merchants, partners, dealers across the country. And it's the associates that make a difference. It's your boots on the ground folks. It's, your army that you're deploying to have these customer interactions. And the number one thing that will make associates be more effective is building confidence. So if you think about when you're at a party or a barbecue and someone starts talking about a topic and you know this much about it, think about how that makes you feel. Associates feel the same way because you're training them so deeply on product and processes. But then when it comes to layering on, whether these are warranties or add-ons or financing, they may not feel as confident as they might. So once you solve that confidence problem, that's going to remove the friction in all of these interactions.
And I think too, what Bill talked about is part of the way to build that confidence is that celebratory aspect of it, right? If your teams know what a win looks like, and how you bring a customer back in, then that just sort of perpetuates itself. As I had suspected before we started, I knew that questions were going to come in as we started talking here, even beyond the questions we had in advance. So I want to get to a couple of these because we've already touched on this, and it is sort of that front door thing. Matt, I want you to hit this one first. It says, how do I overcome the I'm just looking before you introduce yourself to that customer? Because if we're talking about, again, customer loyalty and filling that pipeline, you got to get the contact first. So let's talk about that basic question. I think it's a good one. How do you overcome that?
Sure. A great way that we teach within our stores to overcome the I'm just looking is to let them know that you are the expert. So, that starts with a greet, right there at the door. And, they might give you the I'm just looking, but with overcoming that, letting them know that you are the expert, you're there to help them. and come at it an angle from a value standpoint of what value you can add to them. If they are just looking, you could actually be the one to kind of cut down their looking time if you can ask some questions. But you can't run into it just trying to fire off information and showing them how much you know. If you can flip that and be a consultative style sales associate in asking so many questions that in your mind, you're already picking out those options that are going to help them, because really their main objective here is, can I find what I'm looking for at your store? And from a sales associate aspect, can you cut down their time that they are in that store? They've got so many other things on their plate for the day. Do you really think they want to spend, 2 hours trying to walk through all your aisles and get past your counters and all these things?
Mhm.
Or could you cut all that time down and just ask a few key questions that could set them on their way, and you can have those options ready to go to, good, better, best.
What I like about that too is you're showing them that you're valuing their time. And you said something really key there, which I think is great, is I guess you could even preface one of the questions you have is, listen, and what can I do to help you zero in on what you're looking for? Maybe less about, what I'm saying? Because then now I feel like you're now my advocate. Bill, let me ask you this question that came in somewhat similar to that. You talked about the gathering of contact information. I mean, let's face it, that's the gold, right? So there's a lot of questions on how do you do that? What are the techniques you use? So I'm going to go around to each of you, but let's start, Bill, with you, since you brought that up. So what are the effective ways you have found to gather that customer information?
That's kind of a little bit of a loaded question, because it really all starts with the sales process to begin with.
Okay.
You have to have a solid sales process in place that you follow with every customer. And one of ours is you have to break in with that customer. So we lead with a non-business opening. We try to build rapport. We try to break down customer resistance. And then once you get that done, that whole "I'm just looking" thing, going, Matt, a great point to the time thing, like allowing you to get in with your customers just from the beginning, the first conversation, 2 minutes of building rapport will speed that process up so much. And honestly, when it comes to contact information and getting it just comes down to care for that customer. It comes down to listening to what they're saying. A mentor of mine said there's a reason why we have 2 of these and 1 of these. It's because we ask questions and then we listen. And when we do that effectively, we gain customer confidence, and it's pretty easy to get a quote or an opportunity in the system so that we at that point then can follow up. But I mean, in the end, it comes down to asking. You have to ask for it. I mean, it's very, very simple. Ask for it, and then you can follow up, but then have a good follow-up process so that you're adding content and not just bugging your customer after the fact. That's very important also.
And I do hear you saying, reading between the lines here, that having that rapport is important. And maybe it's a question. Well, I mean, I don't know. Let me ask this question. You guys are the experts. It seems to me, and Renee, I'll start with you. It seems to me that it can't be one of those things where you ask specifically at the same time all the time, that you got to kind of read the situation a little bit. Or am I being a little too esoteric with that? What's your suggestion on how that can be worked into this without turning the customer off?
Yeah, I think it's important to, as you were saying, show that you are in partnership with them, that you are aligned, that you have the same goal, which is getting the customer what they want, what they need for the price that they need it, and building that, closing the sale and building that satisfaction. I think too, when you were talking about the contact info, I think one of the best ways that I've seen, and to make it smooth and not awkward and not bossy, is to talk about the value that you will bring them. Give them the why. Here's why I want to contact you, because you really love that recliner. Can I let you know when we get it in a different color? Or, make sure that you're giving them that personalized answer and that personalized attention.
Okay, Matt, I saw you nod, and I got a feeling you like that concept, right? Of hey, listen, we understand. I've now understood really what you're looking for. Can I let you know when we get, something else in different color, whatever like that? Talk a little bit about using that as a great technique as well.
Yeah, so I like to use the term verbal contract. verbal contract. So what that is if you can, as you're nodding and as you're talking, making sure that you're making your first promise to them. Hey, do you mind if I follow up with you after you leave? I understand you're not ready to make a buying decision right now, but do you mind if I follow up with you? So it feels a lot different to you and to the potential customer when after they walk out of the store that you are following up with them. And I would say to make sure that we are customizing our follow-up to them. Have you listened to part of their story? Do you know enough about them that it's not just some type of form letter of, hey, thanks for coming in, and not being personal with it? The more personal you can be, and that side of things for personalization, customization, the better it feels to the customer as they exit, or as you follow up.
And you said something really interesting. And Bill, I saw you nod, and I think that you might have heard the same thing I did. Bill mentioned about asking, but I love that you included asking permission. And there's a difference between asking and then asking it with asking permission, because this is that respect piece for that customer. And Bill, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I saw you react the same way I did. And I think that's kind of a real cool little nuance, isn't it?
It really is. One of the questions we have, whether you're stepping away from a customer, you're breaking resistance, or you're getting contact information, is would it be okay if I stepped away for just a second and then caught back up with you in a minute? Would it be okay if I gave you a call if this goes on sale? Or I know that you were interested in 60 months, no interest, and we don't have that right now, but I would love to follow up with you on that. But that's a really good point. I mean, it really is. Once you get the customer's permission, not only are they saying it's okay to contact them, but they're also expecting it. So that's the second time. That's the second point. At that point, you have to do it. And you cannot allow your employees to not do it at that point, because now it's expected. It's you've set that up, and you have to do the follow through at that point.
That's great. Matt, I saw you give it a little high five there. You love that, yeah?
Yeah, I really do. And to take that, just one step further is to use the term promise there, that if you say that you are going to follow up, that is a promise. But even before that, like Bill just said, if you ask permission to step away for just a moment, do you mind if I go get the phone? Do you mind if I go check on this other customer? That is a promise you are making. And as long as you come back and fulfill that promise, if you do come back and check in with them, you are fulfilling that promise, that the verbal communication, the verbal promise with them. But on the other end of things, if you are sitting there right now on the other end of this screen and you're saying, well, I'm not closing as much as I need to close, or I'm not doing this, or I'm not doing that. Think of these really little things of, are you walking away from the customer and telling them you'll be right back, and then you never come right back? That is a broken promise in their mind. That is where you just said, I'm going to do something, and then you didn't do it. And those are the small little things that really differentiate between good and great, between closing at 15% versus closing at 50%. That's how it happens.
Or as Renee would say, that's also, correct me if I'm wrong, Renee, but that's also how you build that confidence you're talking about, right?
Yeah, definitely. And that's how you build a trust-based relationship with your customer too.
So let me ask you this one, because it's an interesting question that was sent in by one of the folks who signed up early, that just asked, should the follow-up then, okay, so now we've made this promise, right? After they've left the store, should the follow-up specifically be from the person that made the promise? Or I know there's some entities that might have somebody else do some follow-ups, et cetera. Should there be consistency in who does that follow-up? And that's going to be like a jump ball. Anybody who wants to jump in on that, go for it.
I think it's how you set the customer expectation. So if in your conversation with them, you are committing to following up with them, that's one thing, versus we will follow up with you, which I think is a completely different way of looking at it.
Okay.
Yep, I agree with that. I would just say that to get really personalized customer service, and during your follow-up, any information that you can gather, and I think it's important to have some type of ERP software system, whatever you do, where you can record that information and make it easy for the salesperson, product specialist, whatever you would call them, to have a personal secretary every morning, but it's a computer, right? To tell them who they need to follow up with, what calls they need to make, what's the time frame, but also, the content that they have. It's not about just calling and saying, hey, do you want to buy this thing yet or not? I mean, that's not the idea here. It's to follow up with some personalized information, some content. Maybe if it's a mattress, you send them some sleep tips. Another important thing is to find out how they want you to follow up. Do they want texted? Do they want a phone call? Do they want an email? But having a recording system for those things and then actually doing the follow-up is unbelievably important.
And that's, thank you for that, because this leads me into something that I'm adamant about in my world. And I personally believe in it. You just kind of said it here. Talk about how critical it is to know, not just, okay, it's okay, customer, that I'm going to communicate with you, but to know what their preferred communication channel is. Because I'm a believer that we lose so much when we just assume that the way that we send something out is the way that customer wants to get it. So, Matt, I'm going to start with you. How critical is it not just to get that permission to communicate with them, but to know what the preferred channel that customer wants is?
It's extremely important, and we all think about it as we sit here on this call today. If you're a text type person and somebody emails you, you might not see that email until the end of the day. You might not be a type person that checks your email
or ever, right? I might not see that ever.
Yeah. Exactly. So the channel that you are communicating is vitally important. But one thing I do want to add here, and would love to get some feedback from the others as well, for me and our team, is timing on that follow-up. Because when we think about it, if they walk out of our furniture store and they did not buy today, what do you think they're going to do when they walk out of our store? They're probably going to walk into 1, 2, or 3 other furniture stores. So out of those 4 furniture stores that they've probably touched, on average, 4 furniture stores today that they have gone to, how are you going to be that memorable person? I like to use the term separator. How are you going to separate yourself from those other 3 sales associates that they saw? And one of those that I would love to throw out here is to have a really quick follow-up. If they were looking at a bedroom suit and that their channel of communication is text, is to take a quick picture of that bedroom suit they were looking at and say, boom, here's Matt from Badcock Furniture. Would love to help you when you're ready. That type of thing. Put that picture and a quick text and who you are very quickly, and get that to them within 5 minutes of them walking out, and let them know, I just wanted this to be a reminder in case you went into some of the other stores. They can have that picture, because by the time they've looked at 10 different sets of bedroom furniture, they might not even remember, well, I think I saw this one at this or this one at this. So timing of your follow-up is critical.
Okay. Bill, I'm going to toss it to you, because we're going to just the 2 thoughts there. Number one, I do like what Matt said about timing, but he also, you got to make sure that that person is somebody who's going to respond to a text.
Yeah. I mean, again, it really comes down to being able to record information and having a good ERP or computer system. I know that a lot of people are probably on profit systems. We actually use NetSuite, and we actually automate. So when we put an opportunity or quote in the system, they get an automated text when they leave the store, thanking them for coming in. That's the first point of contact or first point of follow-up. And then we try to contact them again shortly after that with content. And then we actually give them a special offer on the 3rd follow-up on top of the event that we're doing right now, just to try to close the gap, close the loop, get them back in the store, do whatever we can. But timing is unbelievably critical. And man, here's the thing with salespeople. You're on a busy sales floor and you're running on a Saturday afternoon, and you don't have time to send that text or that call or that preferred method right away, being able to automate things like that can give you an amazing advantage in your business. And then there's cool advertising things, geofencing and different other things that you can do when they walk into another store. So
I guess it really does depend too on the, on the scope and scale of your business, because there's some people that if it's such they have the time, they can really do that personalized aspect that Matt's talking about. Or if it's a much busier floor, you need to think about how can I make sure that I'm making those touch points without missing those opportunities. Renee, I want you to weigh in too a little bit now as far as that goes, the importance of these kind of contexts, and also really knowing what the customer really likes as far as communication is concerned.
Right. I really like what Matt said about having a respectful approach, and by showing them that respect by trying to find out what they want to hear more about, how can you contact them, what is the channel, but really dialing into what do they want to hear more about. So if you're, as you guys were saying, if you guys are like missing the mark because you're sending an email talking about a sale when they really wanted a text that was telling them about a new product line that you have, that miscommunication is going to break that trust and break that relationship. So I feel like following up with a general message is great, just acknowledging them, person to person, but then following up with the most accurate information that you can give them.
Okay, so now the loaded question. I get the need for doing all this, but there's a lot of people out there that don't always react well to a lot of follow-up, or some people think it's a little bit creepy that they're getting these things right away. So a lot of people always ask what that balance looks like. And Bill, I know you talked about having a very specific cadence, and it's a little less intrusive when you're talking about texting, et cetera. But is there a concern about that? How do you manage that so that you're not, really blowing it with somebody and really, respecting the fact that they might not want to be receiving as many communications as they might get?
I think the first thing is finding the preferred method of communication. And then the second thing is content. Again, you have to give them content, in the bedding department. They're not quite sure. Send them some sleep tips. Send them a link to bettersleep.org,
So pertinent's got to be right. It's got to be something so that you're still showing that you're still showing that you've been paying attention. Okay, gotcha.
Absolutely. And then to Matt's point too, if you can take a picture of that set and send it to them with maybe some details, or maybe they had a couple of questions that you couldn't answer, or whatever the case is, giving that information back to them in a timely manner where it's reminding them of, what they were looking at and the reason why they liked it. So.
Okay.
I like that, Bill. And
Good.
if I could just add on to that, I bring a little different perspective, as you know, because I think financing is always the secret weapon. So following up in not only with the product, but talking about some of those enablers, what's going to help them get that product. So if you didn't have a chance to talk about financing, or you didn't have a thorough discussion about financing, you could talk about that and about what you have for financing now, what's coming up, how that can help them, how they can start thinking about how this is going to fit into their budget.
Sure. And if you're close to you got a promotion coming up and you're aware that that's coming up too, sure, you can give them the advantage of a little bit of a heads up on that. Matt, I just want to give you a moment there too to talk a little bit about that, because you don't want to turn the customer off, but it sounds like everybody here is just saying that the personalization is what can kind of save you from that.
Sure. So you used the term pertinent. We use that a lot. We say we want to be pertinent and persistent, but not pushy. And so I believe there is a fine line there, and there are times that line gets crossed, but that comes through coaching and understanding. But we've also used the term value a lot in making sure that we are bringing value, like Bill said. And the other key that I really do want to touch on here is to make sure that we understand what their hot button issue is. There's one main reason that they haven't bought from you yet. And that's your job. but that's your job through asking questions, not through trying to sell. And there's there's a big difference there. And I think that's something that more sales associates need to understand is, if they have come in looking for a sectional, and you go right into, well, we've got 10 different sectionals, and you take them around and, try to show them 8 of those 10 sectionals. And then you get to the last one and they're like, well, I can't have one that's more than 88 inches on the back side. Well, then all 8 of those probably would not have worked anyway. So taking the time to ask enough questions, and then once they leave your showroom and you are following up, maybe you haven't found out what their hot button was, but if you ask a few more questions, I'm sure, whether it is the financing piece that is in there, but it's literally by being persistent enough, because there might be some times where you do send a text or you do send an email that they don't respond to. And I think all of us have missed, raise your hand if you've missed a text in your life. Raise your hand if you've missed an email in your life. Just because they don't respond to every single one doesn't mean that they're mad at you. It doesn't mean that they don't want to buy furniture from you. It just means that they didn't respond. But, I would like to hear some other points of view there. But from my point of view, them not responding to a text doesn't mean just, forget about them. We don't want them anymore. They don't want us. That's not what that means.
Well, I want to add one thing. You're hitting a lot of my buttons here. First thing that I want to
sorry
mention,
about that.
No, good in a good way. Because anybody who's involved in any kind of sales should never stop. Discovery should be every time you connect with a customer. I don't care if you've been that customer once or 10 times. Discovery is something that is constant as things change. A line that I want to share, and I'm so blessed to have so many retailers that talk to on a daily basis. And I hear stuff, and I thought this was just want to throw out there. I want to get your reaction when you're talking about asking questions. But I love it when you said somebody comes in, they're looking for a sectional, and if you start spewing on, well, we got these 10 sectionals. Somebody said, what I like to do is I like to say, tell me about the room that this sectional is going to go in. And so now you've got the customer starting to paint this picture, which you're going to learn from, but also now you're showing that you're interested in where this is going to end up. And I just love this. Like, tell me more about where this is, so I can help you. Tell me more about where this is going to go. What you're trying to, and that would have been, Matt, to your point, that would have been the thing about saying, well, that's why we can't have this thing being any more than 88 inches this way, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to throw those 2 out there. Bill, I'll let you start and then I'll go to Renee after that. But those kind of questions are just gold as far as I'm concerned. But
I think it goes beyond tell me about your room. You want to find out as much about every customer. This leads into follow-up if they don't purchase that day. Tell me about your room. What's in your room? What's the use? How many people are in your family? Is this, a formal room? Is this a place where you just hang out? Do your kids have friends over? The more you can find out about that guest that walks through the door, not only are you saving their time to a point earlier that was made and helping them make a great decision on their furniture, but you're really, in terms of follow-up, you're getting the information that you can then use when you do your follow-up to personalize and customize that follow-up. Whether it's a call, whether it's a text, whether it's an email, doesn't matter. But not just finding, I love the tell me about your room thing, because we train that. Like I just got done training that this morning, but it really goes into tell me about the space and the use and like everything you can think about that space.
I love that. So Renee, I want to pose a question that just came up that I think is an important one, and you're uniquely qualified here. One of the ways that we're trying to, always in every store, trying to, to really make sure that we're listening to the customer and getting what they need to get. There's a lot of people that kind of stumble a little bit when it comes to the financing piece. Sometimes it's hard even for salespeople to talk about, those kind of things to customers. So how does that fit into this discovery process? There's some people that, think it's something that's off the top or it's at the end. It's not a one size fits all, but you talk a little bit about how that fits into this so that it does, really fit with the conversation. It doesn't feel like you're stopping and now you're going into a financing spiel.
Right. That's a great question. So that's kind of getting back to the confidence that I was talking about. So we want associates to feel confident in what financing is and how to use it, how to explain it to a customer. And what I encourage is to use plain language and simple language to do it. I think where I've seen a disconnect in learning and development over the years is that we're teaching people on how we want them to talk about it, and it's not a natural fit for their style. So what I say is, have that authenticity. So for example, if you have an associate who always says, "Hey, how you doing? Welcome to the store," and you have another associate that feels more comfortable saying, "Good morning, ma'am," and having that more formal approach, you really need to encourage people to be genuine and authentic. And then when they have the confidence of knowing about financing, of knowing the financing facts, they can personalize that a little bit. So it's not that like they're reading from a manual. It's like they're talking to a friend at a graduation party. "Hey, you know what? I learned about this financing stuff and let me tell you about it." So I think once they are comfortable with that and they can explain it accurately, but in their own words, then I think stopping and starting during the sales journey is a lot more comfortable and doesn't throw them off.
Matt, what do you think? Oh, you're muted.
Let's see. Oh, there we go. Good stuff. Thank you. Yeah. So I think what Renee just used there was a term "comfortable," and I think when we get to the financing piece on these sales, there's a lot of fear going on because within the customer's head, and they're thinking, "Well, I don't know if I can get approved, or I don't know what kind of down payment they're going to require from me." And so, in our organization specifically, we want to really talk about the three different levels without using. Here's a big key for us: is we don't want to use the term good credit or bad credit or anything like that. So what we do is we kind of shift that way of speaking to the customer, and let them understand that we have customers that are just starting on their credit journey. We've got customers that may have been on their credit journey for a while, but might have fallen off the horse and they're getting back on, or well-established long-term credit. And so we asked them, "Do you think that you're in one of those? Are you just starting on your credit journey? Have you fallen off, and trying to get back on, or do you have long-term well-established?" And if you can ask them, "Do you feel like you fit into one of those three buckets?" Well, of course, we all do. Everybody on this call fits into one of those three buckets. And if so, we are going to try to find the right fit for you. And, using that to all we're doing there is taking the fear out of whether they even want to take the next step in this whole journey. And I think that's the key, like Renee said, is making them feel comfortable.
Bill, I want your insights on this too.
We try to bring, we have a very deep, specific sales process, and in kind of our store tour, we just mention that we have credit options available early on. We talk about our tags, and we have financing, what the monthly payment would be on our tags. We also have a QR code that any customer can scan without the help of a salesperson, and they can calculate what their monthly payment would be, what the plans that we have, and all that stuff on there also. So, we just try to, Ashley's big on, the tags and having a sales machine, right? And the sales machine really kind of is the tag that we have on there. So we incorporate all that early on in the up. Now, it really comes down, though, to when you find something that somebody really likes, but they're not ready to pull the trigger yet, it's one of two things. It's either value, you haven't added enough value to that product, and that's feature, advantage, benefit, or they don't think they can afford it. So in terms of that, when you get to that point, it's really one of those two things. If it's something that they love and they want it, then you talk about your payment options, So
and this is and Bill, it's funny. This all connects, right? This goes back to the conversation we had a few minutes ago, which is about that discovery piece. If there's anybody listening to this that has that quandary about when to bring it up, there's no perfect answer here other than know what the customer's needs, wants, and concerns are. And once you figure that out, you'll be able to feel when to drop it in and when, and when not to. I love that. I think those things really, really connect beautifully. I want to make sure that before we, we've got 20 more minutes here, but I want to make sure there's a couple of things that we get to here, because since we're talking today about customer loyalty and about filling the pipeline, et cetera, everything we've talked about right now has been to get somebody to transact. But I think we need to talk about a couple of things that are great opportunities that maybe are also not being fully utilized. Renee mentioned a little bit earlier, we talked about this prior to the gathering today, but referrals. Okay, you've worked your tail off to get a sale. It doesn't end there, right? I mean, how do you guys feel, or what are your suggestions when it comes to how you ask that now new customer to become a referral source for you? And I'm not talking about you necessarily have to pay them or give them any spiffs in that, but I'm just saying, how do you do that? And should that be something that's automatic? Matt, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. So for us, the way that we teach this is that once we get to the end of the sale, let's get everything, signed, dotted, money exchange, whatever happens. And then after that, another verbal contract. Hey, do you mind talking to me for just one more moment? And let's, one thing that I love to do is that, my business is based off of taking care of you for the rest of, any other furniture need that you have. But I'm sure you also have a few more friends that we could, that we could talk to. And I love giving 5-star service. Do you feel like I gave 5-star service today? And, if we can get them to start agreeing to that part of it, it's pretty easy to ask, do you mind giving me the names of 5 other people that I could reach out to and just, I would love to be able to help them as well as I helped you. And everybody has friends.
And you're saying that's for you, that's in every transaction type of thing. I mean, because you can't let them get up. If they get out the door, then you're done. But you really believe in that constant referral asking kind of a situation?
Yeah, I have zero problem with it. If you felt like you provided them with top-notch service, it's something that you earned, and you have to earn that. That's my key phrase there, earning it.
Bill, what do you think as far as the whole referral question goes?
So I think there's a lot of different touch points throughout the life of a customer where you can get referrals. We do something called confirmations and invitations. So at the end of the sale, we turn our customers over to a customer service representative and they finish up the paperwork. And we have a quick 20-minute or 20-second deal that we talk about, telling them that they made a great choice picking their furniture out, letting them know that we're going to follow up with them. And also we have QR codes all around the store, especially at the customer service, asking a customer for a 5-star Google review. You're going to get referrals. Like, everybody looks at Google now, right? Everybody looks at how many reviews you have, what your review rating is. And I guarantee you have a 4.6 to 4.9, and the store down the street has a 3.7, and somebody just moved to town, they're going to your store. So that's one way. It's not necessarily a referral, but I think Google reviews are very, very important.
It's a testimonial approach to it. And I just think that, the point that I always try to make is that it's so powerful, right? We talk about a lot of the questions that came in before we started today were about cold calls or cold people coming in the door. Referrals are warm. It's just like, anything you can do that warms up a possible, connection to a customer. Holy smokes, you got to do it. And Renee, I see you've been taking notes and nodding, so go for it.
Yeah, great information. So I think that the best way to get referrals, like I said before, is to provide an outstanding service. And that customer is just going to be, wind them up and let them go out and share the good news of the experience they had with you. So I think that's the most effective. But the other way that you could think about approaching this is, from now that you have this relationship, is asking them the question, what could I have done better? Or what were you looking for that we weren't providing, because that makes them be invested in that process. And if you take that information and you utilize that, you can reach back out to them and say, hey, thanks for that feedback. It was great. Appreciated it. And then now that, we're doing things that you want to see, we have processes or programs or services that you want, then I would go into, the referral process.
Yeah,
That's a home run. That's a home run.
Yeah, that's net promoter score, like in a nutshell, is really what it is, and we do follow-up calls with all of our guests after delivery, asking a question. On a scale of 0 to 10, how likely would you be to recommend us to your friends or family? You know what net promoter score is, Renee?
Yeah, I do.
Yep. And anything under an 8 would be a follow-up call by a manager, just to try to figure out what can we do better the next time. But also those 9s and 10s, when we do special events, those go into a queue. And those are the calls that are.
They're waving the flag in your face, dude. Come on.
Yeah,
going here.
Exactly. You did awesome. Come back in. We have something awesome going on. So
no, I think that's, and what I love about everything we've talked about today, I mean, we've talked about a few CRM systems and things like that, but really what we're talking about today is just, it doesn't cost you anything. It's just culture, right? It's training your staffs, your staffs this way. Matt, let's stay on this, because it's a good little rabbit hole we've gone down here. So with what Bill just said, and now you're talking about why now who likes you a lot and following up. So part of this whole pipeline driving is not just those referrals, but it's getting that customer back in. So let's focus a little bit of time on that. What are some of the best practices you've seen for the best way to get a customer that you have transacted, that's bought something, to get them back in the store? What are your go-tos?
Sure. So we actually use a program that I developed called the 555 program. So every single day, and Bill kind of hit on this a little bit, but every single day, our sales associates, we're asking them to call 5 past customers that have purchased from them 6 months or more previously, and then also 5 customers that have actually purchased in the last week or so that haven't received their merchandise yet. And so on the previous customers, we're going to ask a few questions about, how are they, if they bought the mattress, how's their mattress sleeping? Are there any other rooms that they're looking to redecorate? Some questions like that to get them back in the store. The other part for the 5 that have just purchased but haven't taken delivery yet, we're going to start off by just asking them, what address that, making sure their address is correct, making sure the phone number is correct, some of those things to make sure that the delivery and warehouse team has no issues. But then if we saw that they bought the bed and the dresser and mirror, but they didn't get any nightstands, that's our chance to talk to them about those nightstands. I see you still have credit left on your credit line, things like that. And then the other 5 is for the future customers that have not purchased yet, that we're trying to get back in the store, and we're going to throw that extra 10% offer out to them. So kind of a 555, and just makes it very simple that every day they know that they come in, they call those 555, and it's a genuine contact to get all of those back in the store.
I mean, that's a true, you've just in your own verbiage have talked really about a true pipeline. That's a pipeline, because you always want to divide it into those segments. You don't want to approach the customer that you haven't seen in 6 months to a year the same way you got somebody that's going to be getting something next month. Bill, talk about the same thing, your go-tos. I mean, you guys, it sounds like, by the way, and this is why you're on the program, you do a lot of training. It's very purposeful, but so what are those things that you guys do to get that customer back in the store?
So we have a customer success program in place. The initial contact, if they leave and they don't purchase, hopefully we can get contact information from at least 50% of the guests that don't purchase. That would give us a 70% productivity score, maybe 80. But an automatic text goes out to them thanking them for coming in. Within a couple of days, we do a follow-up contact with content. So content, I've talked about this already, but it's something meaningful that has to do with the purchase that they were looking at buying and didn't end up doing it.
So it could be what Matt talked about. It could be they bought the a couple of dressers and a bed, but they don't have the nightstand. So you would suggest, is that a good example? You would follow up with the
Oh,
nightstands?
gosh,
Yeah.
customers, like anytime, and this goes back to talking about the entire room, right? Like when you
Sure.
find out about the room, then you know if they have enough space for another nightstand next to it, or whatever the case may be. But then our follow-up program then goes into a third contact within 7 days, because after 7 days, they already went somewhere else. Probably after 3 days, they went somewhere else. But we do give them a special offer, and we have a list of them that they come to the manager and say, you know what, I think I could close this deal if they didn't purchase that day because they had to put money down on 60 months, no interest. So I think if I could offer them 60 months without any money down, I'm pretty sure they would pull the trigger today. And then we try to set the appointment on that call, but we have our salespeople bring the information that they learned from that opportunity to the manager, ask what the offer could be. And there's a list. We're not gunslinging out here. You know, it's not like they can just say, I need another 50% off or something. But they come, you know, with off the list, and we let them make a special offer that. Yes, kind of like what Matt said, the extra 10% off on the last 5, you know, so.
Well, and what's cool about that is, and I know, and I know you do this, is that also I'm sure that they're schooled that when they have that conversation, you approach it as a customer advocate. Hey, I wanted to hit you up because after what we talked about, I just had to talk to my manager to see if there was anything else we could do. And what I've been able to do for you is X, to really place yourself as that. I'm the customer advocate. I'm not just a salesperson, et cetera. I mean, I know you're nodding because I know you do that, but it's not just doing that, but just that little bit of, I'm your advocate, right? And Matt, you've talked about this on the, about how you like your people to really, really listen and be a part of this whole thing. Renee, let me ask you this. What have you seen from a data standpoint, also a background that you have? What are those go-to ways that you're seeing more across the country when it comes to getting that customer to come back and to buy something else?
Yeah, I think it boils down to 2 things. So it's engagement and it's innovation. So you want to keep relationship building. You want to make sure that your customer feels a part of the process and what you're doing, whether they have purchased or whether they're a really warm prospect. So don't be afraid to be innovative. You don't have to do what you've always done, because you know the old saying, if you keep doing what you've always done, it's always going to result in the same actions. So think about something completely different. So what if with all of your new customers, you created a customer advisory panel? So you really bring them into this process and make them feel like they're part of what you're doing and that their opinions really matter. Again, like you were saying, Mark, it doesn't cost anything to do this. Maybe, some coffee and some donuts. But
I'm
this
in.
really, yeah, this really,
I'm in too.
I think it solves 2 things. So 1, you're going to hear in a very candid way what you're doing well and what you aren't, because these guys are your advisory panel now. And then also, once they become really engaged within your organization, those referrals are going to keep happening because they're just going to be your advocate, your store advocate.
Well, we were just making mention a minute ago about waving the flag. If you set that up and somebody says that they want to participate, I mean, hello.
That's amazing.
Matt, I want to get your reaction to that. What do you think? And by the way, I love the fact that everybody on this panel is taking notes. So it's just like you guys are just, I am too, but holy smokes. Matt, what do you think about what Renee just said? That's kind of a creative thought process.
Absolutely spot on. I mean, we like to term those raving fans, and taking care of those, all of them at a really high level. But value goes both ways. We're adding value to them; they're adding value to us, and those are the most meaningful relationships. And getting those into groups, and you being looked at by those people, if they take that time to be part of a customer, advocate type panel. They are looking to you as the expert, and the more people that look to you as the expert, I can promise you, your well will literally never run dry, and that's a beautiful thing.
I mean, everything we've talked about today, the thread through this whole thing has been, it's all of this is great. And Bill, you guys have systems like crazy. Matt, everybody's got stuff in line here. But if you're not engaging the customer in a meaningful way and making them feel a part of it, and that's what just Renee talked about here. If you're not doing that, then you're just conducting behaviors, you're not connecting. And man, I mean, you guys have just made this, this really kind of loud and clear with how that all really works. We've got a couple more minutes, and I just want to ask this question finally, and this is for all the store owners that are watching and taking part in this today and watching this whole thing. So we talked a lot about systems, but how do you lastly make this part of the culture? Training is one thing, training, but how do you make it culture? How do you make sure that your employees, your team is investing in these processes you're putting in place so that you can all be successful? Bill, I'll start with you.
Inspect what you expect. That's really what it comes down to. Luckily, we have pretty good computer systems where I can literally pull up and see how many follow-ups everybody has to do every morning. And it goes onto our morning huddle, and it's expected, right? When you say part of the culture, they will buy in on this when they see successes from it. And I think that's probably the most important thing. But if a manager isn't following up and making sure that these things aren't done, or they're doing it every other day, or they're doing it every two days, I mean, it's got to be a systematic process that happens consistently, or you're never going to ingrain it into your team.
Matt?
Yeah, I would say training and education are the absolute keys. They're one of our core beliefs. When somebody comes onto our team, we literally go over our 10 core beliefs, and we talk back and forth. And I believe it starts at the top with leadership. The general manager of the store, the regional manager, the ownership, myself, making sure that everybody around you are held to the same standards, and that we don't allow ourselves to even top sales writers within the store. They should be, everybody should be doing those same things. It's part of the process. It's like Bill said earlier, it's non-negotiables. We hire with the expectation that they are going to train, and our managers are required to do this.
Renee, I'll let you have the last word here as far as the whole, the issue of making this really a part of the culture in every store.
Yeah, you guys have heard me say engagement about 25 times in our conversation today, because I believe so strongly in that. One of the things that I talk about is motivation. So what is motivating your teams? What is motivating your staff? What do they want? What feels right, and what makes them feel successful? So, there's the joke about the pizza party, but maybe it's not that pizza party, but maybe it's recognition. Maybe it's, having a plaque on the wall. Maybe it's a simple thank you or a gift card. I think that keeping folks motivated and engaged and pushing forward towards success is crucial. And the only way that you can really get that 100% buy-in is if you know what's going to motivate them and push them forward besides making the sale, right? So part of the culture is motivation. But really think about that, and like we were talking with the customer advocacy groups or advisor groups, do that with your employees as well.
You talk about engagement. You got to engage your team. You got to hear from them as well. Give them the tools and let them do this whole thing. I mean, if you don't, really kind of work that through them, it's not going to go all the way out to the customer, no doubt about it. Before we close, got a couple of little reminders here. We have all kinds of additional information relating to sales and sales training, et cetera. It is very easy to be a part of that, and that's of course on myhfa.org. And we're waiting for. We're still new to the Zoom here, so I don't see the screen share, but Caprice, we're trying, and that's good. I do know that we have a number of people who are in stores where they utilize Synchrony, and that there is a Synchrony Ignite code we want to give you. And if we can't pull that up right now, Caprice, maybe you could put that in the chat for me, and I can just let people know, because we got people anxiously waiting to do that. this is, this is just, it's a new system, folks. And so we're going to give some grace here. Caprice, maybe just stop sharing if you could, and then we'll see how, if that does work. But in any case, I want to thank, guys, this has been absolutely fantastic. I want to thank our panel today. We've got Matt Pridemore. As we mentioned, he's a sales trainer for the HFA Sales Academy. If you've not heard a lot about the Sales Academy, please go to myhfa.org and we'll tell you more there. But Matt, thank you so much. Bill Kretz, Director of Sales at Home Trends, always great to have you. And I want to thank Renee Gilmore, Assistant VP at Merchant Learning and Development for Synchrony. I thank the three of you for joining us. And what we will do, I guess, is we will have to maybe send out that code, or let's see, I want to just see what I don't want to let everybody go here until we do. Oh, there it is. Yay. All right. Look at that. The challenge code, sales 0423, and you get your points. All right. I love it when a plan comes together. Guys, I thank you so much. I always like to end every one of our webinars by saying we wish you two things. We wish you the best of health and wish you the best of sales. Go out there, kill it, get those customers in the door, build those pipelines, and get them back again. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.